Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose.
And we've just been to see the Ballad of Wallis Island at the Mockingbird in Screen 2, which is a very long and thin room. Not really a classic screening room, but it was basically full.
Yes.
Which was great because the film got fantastic response, loads of laughs. I mean, we saw The Naked Gun the other day, no laughs. Then we saw Friendship, lots of laughs. And we've seen this, even more laughs. You know, I think this is the one that's had the best response of the last three. People loved it. So it's based on a short film that the Stars made 18 years ago. The short film was called The One and Only Herb Maguire Plays Wallis Island. This has been expanded into The Ballad of Wallis Island, which is about a character played by Tim Key, who is a lottery winner, who invites this guy Herb Maguire, who's part of an old double act. I say old, I mean 2009-10 seems to have been like their heyday.
Yes.
A double act, folk act. He's a huge fan of them. He invites them to this island where he resides. It was filmed off Wales. I don't know that we're given any location actually for the island, but it's around the British Isles. It's very small, not a lot of people there. It's got like a local shop that doesn't sell anything that you want, all that kind of stuff. The folk singer is played by Tom Basden, and unbeknownst to him, the Tim Key character is the only one who's going to be watching this gig. And also unbeknownst to him, Tim Key has invited Kerry Mulligan, who is Tom Basden's former partner, who he hasn't seen in some 9 years, to join them. And, you know, they've since gone their separate ways. And obviously this kind of going to bring back all these old memories and things. It's a really sweet, very funny film. I had such a wonderful time. Yeah.
I could tell. So I suppose my position is I enjoyed it very much as well. And I think it's kind of an interestingly complex film because it's a comedy about loss and mourning. So, you know, I thought that was kind of like a rich mine. I have a perennial kind of critique of British cinema, which is, you know, why does it have to be so cinematically banal, right? Like, you know, it looks like a TV movie, basically. Yeah, there's no thought given to, you know, the significance of the filming. And it's all carried, really, by the actors and the script. And the actors, you know, are wonderful. Well, let me withdraw that. I think Tim Key is wonderful. I have reservations about Tom Basden. Yeah, I mean, he's good enough, right?
Yeah.
But you kind of wish there was either someone more charismatic, like a star in that role, or somebody more skilled. Yeah. So yeah, but he was good enough.
Yeah.
So I think this whole film, really, to me, the value of it is, well, the story, yeah, and Tim Key.
Tim Key is marvellous. We've seen him in a couple of things just recently, like this year we've started to mention him. He was in Mickey 17 as, do you remember the character that was always in like a chicken suit?
Yes.
That was him. And I mentioned him then, and he may have been in something else. He's like nearing 50, and it's only in very recent times that he seems to be getting roles that are kind of showing him off to the kind of wider public. I mean, he's had a very long career. He won the Edinburgh Fringe, the Edinburgh Comedy Award. It's getting on for, it must be 10 or 15 years ago. And he's a poet, kind of. I mean, he does like kind of funny and bad poetry. He's written like 6 books.
Well,
he performs them on stage. He has a very good reputation.
Let's linger on that, actually,
yeah.
because I think that's significant.
Yes.
Yeah, that he's a poet, because, I mean, I don't know to what extent the film is improvised or, you know, how it was written and so on. But it's got such wonderful lines, right? And
yeah.
And the film feels like it has, you know, a poet's grasp of what language can do.
So if you know Tim Key's work, you will recognise a lot of this kind of stuff. It's not necessarily that there are exact lines that he uses, but there are forms of phrasing that he uses in just like the way he speaks. I mean, I was wondering, because I love him so much. He really makes me laugh, and I think he's so unique. His kind of sensibility, the wordplay, and that kind of thing. And he's just kind of constantly on the lookout to take something in a completely unserious way or a completely surprising direction. I was wondering, is this something that can be captured when he's playing a character on film, as opposed to just being himself, like on a podcast, let's say? And I was thrilled to find that like so much of this really captures his sensibility, the way he speaks, the way he will. I mean, his character here is constantly filling silences, and that's not necessarily a Tim Key thing, generally speaking, but he fills silences with just little bits of idle wordplay and dialogue and chatter, and that's it. It really captures like who he is and what I wanted to see from him. I mean, if you want to see him kind of like unvarnished, then you watch something like No More Jockeys, which is his kind of game show, which is just him and two mates, Alex Horne and Mark Watson, who are also comedians, and they go back a long way. And that's just like, they started that during lockdown, and it's just a name game. They just play it with each other over Zoom, but he's constantly, you know, kind of finding new ways to say things, or like just taking things in an unserious direction. That's kind of, you know, that's sort of like the raw Tim Key, if you like. This is a controlled, distilled version of that makes sense in a character in a film, and actually you really believe the guy.
Yes.
You know?
I mean, I
think he's really good.
I don't know who he was or anything about him, and he's very good. He's very touching, right? And you get that sense of, you know, kind of that fumbling person who wants to please, who is filling in all the silences, who's very witty at doing so, who's constantly kind of expanding on the words that he used and kind of bringing them back to reality, or what's the word, fine-tuning the meaning of it, right?
Yes,
Often in ways that contradict it. And he really draws you in. You feel, you know, as the film unfolds, you grow more and more attached to him, right?
Yeah.
So somebody who initially just seems like a bit of a weirdo, then you begin to have information about him, how he ended up there, why he wants those folk singers there, and kind of it becomes, as your understanding of the character grows, so does your affection for him. Yeah. Right.
Absolutely. And I think I haven't seen the original short. I don't know that it had this thing about loss in it. I've only read the you know, sort of synopsis, which suggests that it's about a folk singer who rediscovers his love for music, which is not what's going on here. It's about, well, I mean, up to a point, but it's about kind of rediscovering his love for the music he used to play, as opposed to what he plays now.
Well, I think
because of the breakup of his band.
The whole film for me is, you know, Tim Keyes is out to commemorate his wife or reconnect with what he's lost, and in doing so he finds something else or someone else. Yeah, and the Tim Basden character, I mean, there's that parallelism, that kind of.
But what I was going to say was, 18 years ago, their ages wouldn't have made sense for the kind of story this specifically is. Like, the fact that they are now in their 40s, 50s makes much more sense of the idea that they would have lost people by now, and that they have things to grieve over, and they have a long past to you know, kind of figure out their relationship to. Which, I mean, really, really works for this. I think it's beautiful. I don't entirely agree with you on the way that it looks, although I do kind of.
Yes.
And I know that the director, James Griffiths, who is also the director of the original short, has done a lot of television. He's directed one other film, Cuban Fury, I think, which was, you know, kind of, I think it had mixed reception. It was like a dance movie with Nick Frost. Here, I think he captures the beauty of the island beautifully, and those sunsets things, they look marvellous, and the film...
Well, they do and they don't. I mean, you know, it's a glorious landscape, but actually when you think what a cinematic rendering of that landscape could do, other than just somebody like me with a good camera capturing it. I mean, I feel that the whole film, you know, that glorious landscape, is just captured, really.
Maybe, but I think a really beautiful tone is built out of them, and it's emphasised nicely, I think. It looked lovely. And I think when it comes to the comedy, I mean, I do think the way that he shoots at least allows for the comedy to be expressed. It's all about privileging the actors. And, you know, this goes back to what we were just saying the other day about Naked Gun, how that the editing and the shot selection really eats into the comedy there. It buggers it up. It gets, it puts a spanner in the works of it. Here, you have a lot of two shots. Actors are allowed to play off each other in takes that aren't constantly cut into. It works really nicely. Like, it is about privileging the actors, and they're presumably partially improvised.
Well, again, this fits into my stereotype, and I want to linger over that, because the film has this wonderful sense of Britishness. I don't know how to describe it, right? But everything from, the use of language, to the weather, to the kind of, they're indoors and he pours tea, you have the steam, kind of, the understatedness of it, yeah.
I think there's a sensibility of the way in which people interact that comes across as quite British here. The politeness, the inability to say exactly what you want to say, that kind of thing.
Yes, I love that. I think the film captures that beautifully. But on the other hand, it also fulfills at least my stereotype of what is it about this fucking country, right? That you hire somebody to make a film, and kind of you don't ask of them, that they explore the medium, right? Or that they use the medium to maximum effectiveness. That it all looks like a low-budget TV movie, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what I think this film is. It's really not expressing anything kind of through, choice of angles or lenses or, and actually even, when you're speaking about the landscape, but the film is so badly lit, right? Kind of, it is, it all looks washed out, right? It has some scenes, right? Like, when the lanterns are going up, right? I mean, I took better shots of a similar situation when they had the lanterns going up over Coventry Cathedral, right? Like, it's not hard to get a nice image with that landscape and those lanterns, right? Yeah, and without those sunsets and the sea, like, it's a beautiful place, right? That kind of evokes all of that. But I don't think the camera or the sound or, is contributing kind of much to it.
No, I get what you mean.
And it kind of pisses me off, really. Like, you think, what is it about this culture that prefers the written word or television? Right?
I was sort of thinking idly, I can't remember why. Maybe it's because the trailer for the new Ari Aster film came up beforehand. It's called Eddington, I think. And I don't know anything about it, but but one of the things that came up on screen, one of the quotes, was, this is like a State of America film kind of thing. Damning indictment of the State of America sort of thing. And I was thinking, you don't get those about Britain. You don't get films that do that. Actually, what you get about the things that start national conversations in Britain are television programs. Sure. It's not in America. It's film. Over here, it's TV.
It is, and that's all right in a way. I don't necessarily have a problem for it, and I'm not one of those people who is disparaging of television, But I think if you're making a movie, kind of, try kind of to convey something with, images and sounds. And actually, for me, another big problem, and I'm not an expert on this, is the music. It's so banal.
I sort of found it banal. I mean, the music is all written by Tom Basden, and he wrote a lot of songs, and I understand that they've also performed it as an album. They're selling an album of the music as Maguire and Mortimer, the fictional band. And I kind of get, like, it sounded sort of professionally made and competent, and like I would have believed it as folk music, but I don't know folk music. Maybe it's really bad folk music. I have no idea.
Well, I don't know very much about folk music either. I'm certainly not British, folk music. But I do think that the film has all these opportunities to, have used music so much more expressively than it does so here, right? The scene at the beach, the way it was staged and filmed, and the music for it, was a big letdown. If it didn't structurally fit into the script in the way that it does, it wouldn't have been moving.
I see what you mean. Although the one thing I did like about the production of the music in that scene, which is ultimately the climactic scene where the gig finally happens, is that Kerry Mulligan's voice comes in. She's not there to perform it, having gone home and kind of re-broken up the band or whatever. But her voice comes in, and it represents not only her part in the band, which Tom Basden has kind of, I think it's kind of, he's kind of acclimatizing himself to the acceptance that he won't have her back, that she's not there for him, but also represents the other missing woman there, which is the Tim Key character's wife, who he's lost, and she's the character who it's all for. Like, she's the one who loved this band, she's the one who passed away, she's the one who 5 years ago, on this day passed away, and that's why this gig's happening, and this is who it's all really for.
Yes.
And I thought that was a really nice, moving touch that worked very well.
I love that. I mean, I loved it emotionally. And, I like the Tim Basden character. I mean, I don't want to disparage him. I do think, that the role would have been more effective with somebody who was more charismatic or more of a star. But he is very good.
He is.
Right?
But I get what you mean. I've seen very little of Tom Basden. And again, it's actually from No More Jockeys, where, they chat away while they're doing the game. And they refer to Tom Basden sometimes because he's a mate. And they'll always refer to the brilliant Tom Basden, he's a very good friend of theirs who they've worked with. And then I see him in something, and I go like, is he brilliant? I don't quite get it. And I see him here, and I go, is he brilliant? What really is he bringing to this? It's not that he doesn't offer nothing. You get the sense of frustration at where he is in his life and the kind of things he's doing, and the frustration, particularly with Tim Key once he finds out kind of how he's been slightly duped into this. The kind of pent-upness, he's quite a spiky kind of character, but he's also quite withdrawn, and so he doesn't express an awful lot. And as you say, he's good, it all makes sense, but there is a factor missing that someone else might have brought to this. Yeah.
Yeah. And, to contradict myself, because you know how much I've hated Carey Mulligan, ever since...
Promising Young Woman.
Yeah, she tried to fire the editor of Variety.
Not the editor, just some reviewer, wasn't it?
Some reviewer, that's right. But I really liked her in this, actually.
Yeah.
I thought she was wonderful. And she evoked a type, that kind of person who returns to the farm and makes chutney, and she's well off enough to be able to do that, and she's a bit wild, but kind of self... reliant, or with a great sense of self, kind of, the shiny things in her eyebrows and her way of dressing, and and also her way of speaking about herself, which is without illusions. So on the one hand, she's asserting the feminist aspect. Why aren't you paying me as much as him? On the other hand, she's very upfront about him writing most of the songs, certainly the good ones, etc. Yeah. So
I'm not sure that was what she was saying. I mean, wasn't she kind of needling him there because she was saying like, your perspective is that you're the one who wrote the good songs, and actually I contributed more than you think. That's what I got from what her comments were there.
Well, my sense was that I contributed more than you give me credit for, but still, I kind of, I think it's made very clear that most of the songs were written by him. Yeah, and so on. Okay. That was mine. That
wasn't the way I saw it. I did see it as someone who had a certain very low-lying resentment of his personality, because then we also know that he's the one who went off and did the solo album, which is what ultimately broke them up. And he goes, well, you could have done a solo album, whatever.
Yeah, she did nothing afterwards.
And she didn't. But, he also tries to do this. It was an accident the way it happened. It's like, you accidentally wrote a solo album? I mean, come on.
Well,
so I think there's a certain degree of resentment that she has, although she might be willing to forgive things.
I don't know, because you do get the sense that he is the one who's been committed to music for his whole life, and she went off to make chutney.
Well, yeah, she was willing to give it up.
So,
no, I agree.
So, and my impression is, and I say this as a credit to the character, that she's very self-aware about that. In my understanding, she acknowledges that explicitly. Anyway, it's a performance and a presence, that I liked very much, and I think the film loses something, when she leaves, right? I mean, we get Tim Keyes. I thought the woman who played the grocery store owner was very good. I thought Carey Mulligan's husband was very bad.
Sian Clifford plays Amanda, the shopkeeper, and Akemyi Nadifornian is the American husband. And unfortunately, I don't have a pronunciation guide on his name.
Yes, well, I didn't like his performance at all. He came kind of across as smarmy and judgmental, and also kind of inconsequential, really. So
I did wonder, I mean, she leaves, and you go in. Did he go with her? Where is he still bird watching? How's he gonna, is she in touch with him? She just left without him, and then he turns up, and then he leaves as well. And you're like, well, I feel like it's not like a big deal, but I feel like I had questions about exactly what he was up to at that point. Going, oh, did she leave without me? Anyway,
I didn't have any of those questions. I mean, basically she was there to do the gig, and he was trying to keep himself busy, and obviously he didn't want to meddle with the ex, right? Because that's the other thing, and I thought that was good, get him out of the way, so the tensions become about something else rather than a competition for her, and as he says at the end, he was very self-aware of, who the other person was and what he hoped for, and what he didn't get. So I liked all of that. I mean, I think it's a quirky film. It's very, very funny. It's very funny about sad things, which I think is really to its great credit, right? And yet there's also this sense that without Tim Keyes, this film would not be very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, Tim Key is someone who you should be putting front and centre in absolutely everything that he's in, and he should be in more things. The guy's fantastic. I love him so much. I can't say enough about
that clear?
How much I love him. And his presence just makes the whole thing come alive in all these interesting ways. I mean, right from the start, he's just talking in this, slightly quirky, odd way in which he concentrates too much on minutiae and things like that. There's actually a kind of thing that, when it's done badly, I really struggle with. You do get kind of things, I don't know, here's a vague example. At the start of Guardians of the Galaxy, there was that thing where Chris Pratt is, he's being cool, and he's listening to music, and he's diving, and he's shooting, and blah, 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 and then he eventually comes up against a baddie. I'm vaguely remembering this stuff. And he goes, I'm Star-Lord, and it's cool. And the guy goes, who? And he's like, I'm Star-Lord, man, Star-Lord. And it's like, you've seen that kind of joke a lot, like the undercutting, the deflation, and I thought, oh, this is shit, it works really badly. And that's a kind of sort of comedy of, I don't know, awkwardness that you see a lot that I really struggle with, because I find that it's often really lame. But that kind of, kind of getting, like, fumbling over words or concentrating on minutiae, that kind of thing, in Tim Key's hands, works really beautifully. I love it to bits.
I don't think you have to put positive one film against the other, because I thought the first Guardian of the Galaxy, that was a wonderful moment, and the music with that, and it was glorious. I loved it.
I think that, just to pick on that film, it's just the first example that kind of came to mind of that kind of thing that I've seen a lot of. Quite marvelly, actually.
Well, let me shift gears here, because I think what is worth maybe thinking about, although I don't want to, it might not be to you, but indulge me, because I think for me, what is interesting about this film and the one we saw yesterday, Friendship, was, that they're very far from great films for me, but actually I really loved watching them. Yeah, I think, they're films that are kind of not fully realized in some way, but that nourish you more than other films that are glossier or more expertly made, or they're films that feel about something kind of serious, or that's something that you can connect with in your life, but they're about life, right? And also they're very, very funny, right, with it, in kind of unexpected ways, and that you feel nourished by them, in a way that, maybe, in quotation marks, better films, or more expertly made films, or whatever, often don't nourish you in these ways. And I think that's kind of, something interesting that makes one hopeful about cinema, right? As you said, here are these small, quirky films. There's an audience for them. They don't need to be perfect, right?
Importantly,
So I thought that was interesting that 2 days in a row we've had this kind of experience.
Yeah. And it's lovely as well that they've been so funny, because honestly, after the Naked Gun, I thought I might never laugh again. It soaked it all up.
And something worth commenting on, yeah, again in relation to Naked Gun, that these very serious, touching, imperfect films, yeah, were kind of given soul and wit by comedians. Whereas actually, the Hollywood comedy that is Naked Gun 2 is not played by comedians, right? And actually, there's a price attached to that, yeah?
Yeah. Naked Gun 4.
Or Naked Gun, whatever.
Yeah.
So I thought that's also kind of interesting, yeah? That kind of, you have these people that are known to be comedians, and yet, again, I forget the guy's name from yesterday, but
Tim Robinson.
Tim Robinson. You feel he's like a real person. He's like kind of someone you know, right? So he's not kind of particularly handsome or anything, but he's legible, and he's funny, and he's conveying kind of all of these emotions that you recognize, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, in a way that, to me, Liam Neeson did not.
No.
So,
No.
when I was talking about Britishness, there's also that thing about, I don't know, accepting eccentricity.
Yeah.
Right? Because, you know, what you see of him at the beginning is, you know, he's like the sweet oddball, right? Like, kind of, you don't know where he's coming, yeah? And you get information around that little by little. He was just a nurse, you know, so how does a nurse live in this house?
Yeah.
Right? And so, yeah, and then you begin to get, and, you know, the plot device is ludicrous. He won the lottery not only once, but twice, right? Like,
It's such a great joke.
Yeah.
He won the lottery, spent all his money travelling, and then he won it again, and he went, well, I'd had enough of travelling.
Yeah, so you know, it's kind of quite eccentric and throwaway and so on. And yet, kind of the moment, and you get all these clues. So, you know, when was the last time you were intimate with someone? 5 years ago, right? And then you discover that it's like the 5th anniversary of his wife's passing, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, so it, you know, it's a film that feels oddball, eccentric, and then it becomes more and more knowable. And as it becomes more and more understandable, it also becomes more and more touching.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a lovely aspect of the film.
And actually, there is one thing which is a minor. Well, it's sort of not minor, but I wonder whether it's an issue with the film or an issue with the screening, which is that there were points where I found the dialogue hard to hear, particularly when they were outside.
Yes.
I mean, I wonder whether because there was obviously ADR involved, and there always is in films. I don't know to what extent it was used, but you'd think that would make things clearer, easier to hear. But there was something about either the screening, well, either the audio system was just too boomy, that the audio kind of muffled itself.
It's a problem with the film.
Or it's an issue with the film. I would be interested to see it on home media where I can hear it through different speakers to find out if it was an issue with the production of the sound or the speakers at the cinema.
I mean, we've seen films in that cinema before, and we didn't have problems with sound. So I don't think it's the projection system. And you're not the only one to complain about that. As I was waiting for you outside the cinema, yeah, kind of people walking by were saying, "Oh, I couldn't hear it properly."
Yeah,
so,
but that may still just be that cinema.
No.
So we'll see.
Well, I'm doing two things. I'm saying that you're not the only one to think that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also, I think it's the film itself.
Yeah.
So there are
well, I'll
two
be
different
interested
points.
to find out, because that's a shame, because obviously so much of the comedy in this, pretty much all of the comedy in this is verbal. And so to miss lines is, you know, sacrilege.
Well, but you know, it is a very low budget film. I'd be curious to know how much it cost.
Yeah, but nothing's that low budget that you can't hear the dialogue. That's an issue with production if that's what it is.
Well, if it's filmed on location, you know, and if they don't have access to expensive equipment,
they have access to expensive equipment. Everyone does. I mean, you can make can make films so cheaply and easily these days. That is not beyond the wit of man to redo your sound, to redo a bit of dialogue. And they did, like I said, in the credits, they credit an ADR production or producer. You know, so it's an issue basically. But I don't know if it's an issue with the film or with the
I
screening
suspect
today.
it's with the film. And the reason why I say that is because for me, it's also very poorly lit. Right, and I do think, the budget is an issue in relation to those elements. So,
Yeah, I think budget's more likely to have a seriously detrimental effect on lighting than dialogue, which you can re-record at a pittance. You know, you can get our mic and re-record some dialogue if you have to.
Well,
You know, and we make this podcast for much less than £500,000.
much less, like £0. But anyway, let's wrap up. So, we both love the film. We both love the experience of watching the film. So thank you very much for listening. We are eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Audible, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, and YouTube Music. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies, and Blue Sky, eavesdropping.bsky.social, and the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.